Lights.
Action!
Welcome to another unauthorized and refueled Thursday treasure hunt in the sharky waters around the Gatsby Islands with Gatsby Deep Diving Queen Raae!
Oh, that would be me! Cheers.
And our pirates! Oh, are we already drinking? Well, I
already
must say
drinking.
it's AK.
It's me.
AK. I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
There it is, AK.
I dropped dead halfway through the stream. Ignore it.
And Paul.
Hello.
So it says here in the Google document, singing ?
The Google document that you made?
Yes. Did you read it? Did you read it? Are you singing? No.
Am I supposed to sing?
I don't know. Okay. Guess not. Okay.
I must admit that I didn't read the Google document.
All right then.
Paul is like, oh my god, who are these people I'm doing this stream with?
I'll skip that then. Okay. The tiny task for today is update Twitter bio.
Ooh, and why? Do we
Paul?
want to just announce it?
Oh, are you asking me why?
Yes.
Paul, do you have
Why?
some news for
Like-
us?
Whose Twitter bio are we updating?
Mine.
And
Yes!
Whoa, wait. Well, we don't know why yet, and that's the thing. We're going to do a live reveal for something.
well then
But
you gotta share your
everybody-
screen then, Paul.
Everybody,
Well, no,
you must pour into your glasses.
Yes.
Um,
And also, folks, in the chat, chat wherever it is, what is Paul's big reveal? Anyone know?
Well-
Anyone want that?
whoa, what's the
Actually,
prize?
it's
What's the prize?
It's going to be a big reveal that I'm going to use Gatsby functions to reveal. So we might actually, I know. So we might need you to share your screen, Benedicte, and if you can just bring up paulie.dev, just bring up my live blog URL, I'll talk you through it.
I am just opening that document so I know what we're doing. Oh, this is okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. We're gonna have a look at Paulie's API. People can start guessing what.
No, not the API, just my blog, paulie.dev.
Your blog.
Mm.
I'm just gonna share screen. But I want to see some guesses though. Are people guessing?
No.
Are people guess?
That's cool. That's okay. No pressure.
There we go.
So here we go. So you can see under my name, there is what I do. That is my job title. And the Jamstack developer, technical content writer, freelance is pulled in from my Twitter bio using a Gatsby function and the Twitter V2 API. So my Twitter
So if I
bio,
if I go to your Twitter, it's the same. It's the same. I can't even spell. This is going well. I can't spell Twitter today. Okay, so if I go here, that's the same information we see.
correct.
So let's have both of them. Not Paulie Caliphone. Paul's. There we go. Okay. So we have your bio there. And then we also have your commercial portfolio. That's your commercial portfolio. Then we have your kind of personal site. And then this is the text we're talking about, right? This is the description you're talking about.
Correct. And
Correct.
I am
And we're
now...
and we can see it here in his personal site. We can see it here in his commercial site, and then there's going to be magic happening.
I thought you were going to change your date of birth. So maybe you had it wrong.
Benedicte, I have saved. Let's have a refresh and see what happens.
All right.
So I'm going to refresh Twitter first. Look at that! Somebody got a job at Gatsby.
Correct.
So let's head on over to your personal site then. And look at that.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! So we're done for today. That was the whole stream.
That was it. That was it.
Thank you.
So for how long has this been your goal, Paul?
Almost 3 years. So 2018, I started my Gatsby journey after dropping Next.js because I didn't like the framework or the community. And then I found... Not that there's anything wrong with it, I just didn't like it. And then I found the Gatsby community, and you're all so wonderful. And then I found, building things with Gatsby was great. So I set my sights on working there. And just like that, almost 3 years later, I now have a job there, which is fantastic. And not only that, it's pretty much the dream job. I'm sort of midway between full-on engineer and marketer. So I work on the marketing team, and it's kind of a developer relations role. And I'm also doing software engineering and building things. So I can continue to create content and also continue to create projects and build stuff. So I'm very happy about that.
Getting paid to do what you love.
Absolutely.
So do anyone have any questions for Paul? Just pop them in the chat. And they lived happily ever after. Would that be Gatsby and Paul?
Yeah. I'm disappointed, Paul, that there was no I thank Mother and I thank the Gatsby community and all that. Where's the speech?
I mean, there are some thanks. To be honest, there are some thanks. I don't know if anyone who I'm going to thank is watching, but Michelle Guinau, who was the content strategist a little while back, and she first found me after doing 100 days of Gatsby, and initially asked me to write a blog post about that, and that was over a year ago now. And then we sort of became friends, and she sort of kept putting me in touch with the right people at Gatsby. And then, of course, Dustin Shao, who's the VP of engineering. Big thanks to him. More recently, the Gatsby's new CMO, a chap called JD, who's been fantastic. And then another person on the marketing team, Lacey, who's been very helpful. So they're my big four, I would say. Thanks to those. They've all been really great in getting me here. And then naturally, thanks to Benedicte and Ula and AK for listening to me moan about it for the last year and a half. And I'm like, why can't I get a job at Gatsby? And now I have.
I know there are some more people.
I would be lying.
Go on, AK.
I said I would say you're welcome, but I'd be lying. Just talk about it now for me.
Thanks.
And I know we're not the only ones, because I know there's a WhatsApp group that I'm not a part of that also have been able to hear you moan about that. And I don't know if do you want to publicly share the story about your niece?
Oh, I suppose I can do, yeah. So when you apply at Gatsby, obviously you put together a cover letter, and in an effort to stand out from the crowd, I also included a letter that my 10-year-old niece, an email that my 10-year-old niece just sent me randomly one day. And so obviously I have lots of conversations with my sister about various things, and my niece is normally just there in the background playing on her iPad or something, but she put together this letter which described what I was doing.
I don't have an answer for
that. Sorry, my Alexa's just kicked in. Said she didn't have an answer for that. All right, chill out, Alexa. My niece basically put together a letter just, explaining why she thought I should work at Gatsby. And I think it kind of ended with something along the lines of, he's just following his dreams or something. It was a really nice touch. So I think that might have tipped Gatsby's hiring team over the edge, because it was bit of an emotional blow from a 10-year-old saying, "Hi, I'm my Uncle Paul," but it worked. So thanks, Mia. Good work.
Mia can write a compelling essay. She could maybe she should get her own little Gatsby site where people can book or not book comment no order. What's it called? Commission essays.
Strong female advocate.
Yeah. But we have a question. So Petra is asking, what's the best way to bootstrap a new site? I have some React knowledge, but not a lot of Gatsby knowledge.
Honestly, I would say rewind the clock on our streams and go back to our first one. As good as Gatsby starters are, I personally don't think they're a good way to get started because they give you everything which you will need at some point, but you don't need to get started. And on one of our first streams, I think what did we do? We created a new repo, made a default NPM package, installed Gatsby, React, and React DOM, and made an index page. And it took about 3 minutes. And that is technically getting started with Gatsby. Once you've got the basics down, which will cover, how to make a page. And I would say don't even worry about the GraphQL stuff for the moment. Just get some pages and get some links working. And then you can move it on to the data sourcing stuff. And it's easy to get lost in this, I think, if you start with a starter, because it tries to give you all of that in one go, and I don't think that's the best way to learn.
Yeah. So you mentioned the first. I'll try to update the description with that. But if you go to the description, there's a link to the playlist, and one of our first streams is how to just create a Gatsby project without using a starter. And I was surprised at how easy that was, or how little was required, because I've been doing Gatsby sites for a couple of years already when we started this stream, but I've always just used some starter or one of my older projects as a starter, so in that stream we actually go through the few pages that you need, and in that, when you're in that land, it is all React mostly, because you create pages with React components, so you could basically make the site with all of the content inside of React components, and then you can start spreading out from there, like Paul said.
I also have a repo on my GitHub, and my GitHub username is the same as my Twitter username, but the repo is called Mr-Minimum, and that is basically the absolute minimum that you will need to spin up a Gatsby site. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a starter, because all it does is render a page, but it is what Benedicte was saying. It's just like, this is what you need just to get something displaying in a browser.
So maybe now that you're at Gatsby, you can get a starter that is called Mr. Minimum.
I think you should. I think you should do that.
Well, I don't want to be in competition with my own Mr. Minimum. There'll be a clash of, I want to get all those GitHub stars for my own one, don't I?
Oh, you do you? Okay.
And also, look, I'm not necessarily sure if that is the best way to learn, Petter. Like that's how I've approached it, but that's how I would approach everything. I would start with the smallest possible element and build up from there. And I feel like Mr. Minimum is step 0. Gatsby starters are like step 3. And I think if you do jump that bit, I think you miss some. I mean, as you said, Benedicte, like you didn't even know after developing with Gatsby for 2 years, you didn't really know that that's all you actually needed. So I don't know. Anyway, it's up to you. I would say start with step 0 though.
Yeah.
I'm just chatting and listening and so do we want to have a look at, because I thought it would be fun, since today's tiny task was updating the Twitter bio, it would be interesting to have a little bit of a look on how that is all kind of put together, because I think it does demonstrate something that we want, or one of the things I like about Gatsby, where you can stitch together content from several locations. You're not kind of stuck to the one CMS that you chose, or the one framework, or like the content, the headless approach, the Jamstack approach. We can stitch together content from several places. So it would be interesting to see how Paul's done it. And then also maybe we could talk a little bit about like other ways it could have been solved or could be solved. Yeah, should we just head on into the coding? If people don't have any more questions. I saw Inessa said something. I have to figure find it. So he said, fun fact, I use Next.js frequently, but my only Jamstack friends are Gatsby folks.
That's because Gatsby has a very friendly community.
Yes, and we do appreciate having you in our little Nattermob community. So yeah, I should share my screen again, and let's have a look at some of that code. Okay, I think I got all of it. Let me just double check that I'm not showing off your secrets.
Yeah. Again, you mean?
Again, well, these are some more important secrets, so I don't want to, you know. Yeah, I had, because I did that right before stream, right? So I didn't want to accidentally have those open. Okay.
Do you want me to explain? Because I don't know, I'm not quite sure what repo what are you spinning up? What are we showing here?
I have the Paulie API, and I also have PolyDev 2019. So maybe let's rename that.
Let's maybe. Well, no, because it's just that's when it was built. I think let's start with just looking at Paulie API in the browser. You don't necessarily need to have it running locally.
Okay.
We can look at it. If you've got
because I have it here. So you have a very nice. I'm gonna make this big again. You have some very nice documentation going on here over on
well, this is
API.
what I wanted to bring up. So Gatsby is a static site generator. It doesn't have to be. There's no data in this site. This is all just an index page with some hard coded stuff. But I thought, because I'm building this API because I want to reuse functions, and I'm building it with Gatsby, so why not build a documentation site around it? And to go one step further, just sort of near above the table, you've got that run in browser button, Benedicte, if you want to click that.
Oh, I have to listen to you as well?
Oh, yeah, it's just switched off. Great. That's right, everyone does.
Okay, run in browser.
So here we go. This is doing the exact same thing as we just saw on my blog, where it hits that Twitter endpoint, but we could, for instance, put in your Twitter username there and then hit submit, and we should get your Twitter information.
Entities, URLs, profile image, description.
So Paulie API is not just a way to expose some endpoints. It's a documentation site, and it's an interactive playground for the API. So when I'm developing a new endpoint, and there's a number, if you go back to the homepage, there's a number of different endpoints. So that one's get Twitter user. If you scroll down, I've got the make Stripe payment, which I think we discussed before, which is how I handled the custom Stripe payments from MDX Embed and my blog. GitHub user, GitHub repo, GitHub user events. And these, again, you can interact with all of these right from the API site. And then later, if you wanted to implement them in multiple web properties, there's documentation for how to do it. Let's have a look at your GitHub user events. So I bet there's a couple of YOLO commits in there, isn't there?
Please don't.
Well, look, anyone can go to Paulie API and go to that page and type in Raae and see what happens. It's all public. This is the beautiful thing.
Oh boy, let's see. Yeah, so the branch was called Bootcamp 2.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see if all of my YOLO commits are in here. Or no, I think I deleted the branch after merging. So I actually managed to like make it nicer and call it soft launch instead of changes.
I mean, this is a really fun one. I'm gonna just send you another link to something. I'll put it on the private chat because this was something I wrote for a tutorial recently about the. Here we go. I made like a data dashboard for GitHub events. And this might be sacrilege, but the site you're about to see was not built in Gatsby. It was built using, but it uses all of my Gatsby JS endpoints. And so this is just a nicer way to visualize the GitHub events.
So you can see what has happened on the different. on the different projects.
And because that endpoint, like we just typed in your username and hit submit, it's the same principle here, where in this site build, I call that API endpoint, but I pass in either a repo name or a username, and that's how I get the events for each of those repos. And moreover, if you disable JavaScript in your browser, can you do that quickly?
What? Can I not go to application?
You can do it. I don't know where it is. I've got a little plugin. Does anyone know how you can do it? You can do it in DevTools.
Oh, I know there's like a command. When I do it a lot, I remember, but then I don't remember anymore.
Sorry, what are we trying to do? Because it's spaced out.
We're trying to turn off JavaScript.
Oh, you have to go to the 3 dots and then I can't.
Oh, yeah, and then run command.
Yeah.
Disable.
Nice, AK.
I know, right? I did it today.
Okay, and then refresh, and then there's no JavaScript, but it still works.
Yeah,
we have a question.
Well, these aren't working.
Question in the chat.
Yeah.
Is it used in Swagger? And
No.
I think it was about Paulie API. No.
So the reason you're getting spinners on those two is because if you close the DevTools.
Yeah.
So the events you're seeing on the left-hand side are still there with JavaScript disabled because I fetch those at build time and bake them into the page. The events on the right are at runtime. So this is using a Gatsby endpoint using JavaScript. And obviously if JavaScript's not disabled, not enabled, you don't get them. And that site's not built in Gatsby. It's built using Astro. So like I've got a site not hosted on Gatsby Cloud, not built with Gatsby, but uses Gatsby functions as endpoints at build time and at runtime. And I might give you another link because this is turning into the Paul show. But
I mean, it is the Paul show. Paul just got a job at Gatsby show. I'm going to give you this show, Paul. It's
I'm going to
fine.
give you another link in the private chat. I just wrote a tutorial for Smashing Magazine, which will explain how I built all of that. So if you want to build your own, you can also find that link on my blog under the writing section on the nav. But that will explain how I built everything. And there is a link to the Paulie API and that dashboard that I built with Astro at the bottom somewhere.
Yeah, there. It's a lot of text.
Yeah, it's quite a big blog post that. But, it's quite an in-depth topic. I'm sorry. And there's also Code Sandbox examples where you can use the demo API that I built for that. You can use the GitHub events and GitHub user. And you can just test it out for yourself.
Yeah, we're not going to open Code Sandbox now because my computer is already.
Let's close all of that down.
Firing on all of its cylinders. But let's head back to the code so we can have a little actual look at it. So I'm guessing there's an API folder in here because that's where we have our functions. And you have a get bono. Is that your hello world?
Oh yeah, that was a little joke with Scott. I forgot that was in there. Did I commit? I did commit that. Yeah. Whoops.
But I mean, it's always good to have an endpoint that should properly work. Oh, so Gatsby is showing up for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Hello.
You co-workers earlier, but you were busy doing something important.
Yeah. So Gatsby saying, "Lucky to have you on board." And then I think Jeff was also saying, welcome on board.
Oh, Jeff's here. Oh, fantastic.
And then there was
Aaron as well.
And everyone is loving your velvet, but are being corrected by AK that it is velour. And there is a +10 for velour. There is no penalty.
Yeah, see, Aaron knows. See, Aaron's very cool. So he understands velour.
Yeah, I think that should be.
I'll be honest, I'm actually googling for purple velour and looking at options, but nothing looks quite as fancy as yours.
I mean,
I think we need to celebrate. I think we need to celebrate the fact that Gatsby's here.
There needs to be Paul velour Gatsby sweaters happening pretty fast, because otherwise the queen will seize this merch opportunity and sell Paul velour purple velour sweaters with ripped off Gatsby logo that my daughter will draw.
Well, it can just be a P logo, can't it? That would be nice. Just a P in a purple.
Yeah, because Leyland is
circle.
like G for Gatsby, P for Paul. That's like that's how she's. And then there's Q for Queen and B for Benedicta, O for Leo. That's how we roll. Anyway, so we have the Get Bono, and just keep the Gatsby love going in the chat, folks. That will make Paul and Gatsby very happy. So we have Get Bono. I do recommend everyone to create like a simple type, like a simple function like this. So when you're working with your project, if something goes wrong, you can always go back to that kind of. I'm gonna bump it up. You can always go back to like that your simple function that you should work and see if everything is still connected and up and running. Because sometimes when you're working on these more complex functions, something breaks or something doesn't work and you think it's because of something new you've done, but sometimes it's just because everything it just kind of crashed. And then it's always good to be able to go back to like a hello world or bird shirts okay type thing. I seem to not know where anything is today. How do their appearance zoom in? So everyone can actually see this. How's the font size now on your tiny screen, Paul?
Well, it's fine, but I wrote that, so I know what it says. You better ask someone else.
Okay, I think we're gonna leave it at this font size. Okay, so let's focus on the Twitter one, since that's the one we demoed. So we have Get Twitter User.
Yep.
And interestingly, because Paul is hitting this from all kinds of domains, he will have to say what domains are okay for, so we don't run into CORS issues. So, and this will also mean that you cannot hit this from your personal site if you want to sneak use Paul's.
Or annoyingly from localhost.
Or annoyingly from localhost. So there's the CORS, and then there's the run middleware. I wrote this one. I wrote.
You did. That's yours. No, this is yours. This is all stolen from yours.
Oh!
The only thing that's different is I wrote that allowed origins callback. That's the only thing that's different. But the cause callback is your thing.
So we are checking to see if there's a user name on the body, or we're deconstructing the username from the body. So that's what we're sending in. That would be the Twitter username. And then you're checking to see if it's production. And if it's production, you run the middleware to only allow calls from those allowed domains. And then if there is no username, you send back a nice 400 saying that it's missing. And if it's not missing, you are calling the Twitter API.
Yes.
And is this something you've written? Yeah. So you created your own client service.
Well, I've just wrapped up the Twitter client and put it into. You'll see it's out. I think it's in the root source. It's called clients.js, and I've also got the OctoKit one in there.
Yeah, we can have a look at that. I'm just gonna go with the flow here. So we are then calling Twitter. You're asking for some specific fields. And then you return a message, which I often do, and then you return the data for the user. And then there's an error, generic error, if there's something wrong with the Twitter. If you're calling if Twitter errors out, your Twitter request errors out, you get a Twitter error, and if it's some kind of other error. Request blocked by CORS. So you're just assuming your code is correct, and the only error you would get here is a CORS error. So have a look at
the final pusher would be, but with developing it, I obviously wasn't sure.
Yeah. And then you are using the Twitter looks like Twitter. Is that an official SDK from Twitter, or is that something somebody else has made?
That's a good question. Have a look in package.json. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it is the official one.
Okay.
But
and then there's the OctoKit. Yeah, and then there's the OctoKit one. Yeah. So what you're doing here, which is quite smart, is instead of having to send in all of these keys every time you do a request, you create them here in one place and send in the keys in this one place. And then you import Twitter and OctoKit from this client's file instead of having to kind of create a new one for all of your different endpoints. Because that is something you will soon notice with endpoints, that there's going to be a lot of shared functionality between the endpoints, and you cannot put those files into the API folder, because then Gatsby tries to make those files into endpoints and you get all sorts of errors because they are not properly formatted as endpoints. So if you want to have some shared code, you need to put that somewhere else, and you put it in clients. Made one in one project. I made an API-services folder. So there's different ways of solving that, so you don't have to like repeat yourself in all of these GitHub, in all of the GitHub endpoints, or if you had more than one Twitter endpoint. Yeah. Okay. Anything you want to tell me about this? Now I just kind of read your code, which turned out to be my code.
Well, the way you
very familiar.
The way you handled the middleware was yours. All I've added to the cause, all I've added to it is the origin callback, which took me so long to find, because if you look at npm cause, it just says
this one, or
the one above it on line 10. You can see there's the cause handler, but I pass into it the origin callback, and so what this does is accepts the origin, runs it past allowed origins includes, and depending on whether the origin is included in the array above, which was that list right at the top, it will return true or false, which causes the promise to either resolve or reject in the middleware. Does that make sense? Yeah. However, I would like to add to this, because I've done a lot more research around cause, and whilst this will block requests from other origins, so you couldn't use my endpoints in your code, but if you were to try and hit my endpoints from a curl just ignores cause anyway. And so I've now landed on the fact that actually, if you're going to make a public endpoint, this is all irrelevant, and you can just simplify it by adding the allow access origin star, because really this doesn't really prevent anything. This gets you 50% of the way, and that other websites can't use it, but it doesn't mean other services can't use it.
Yeah. So when you said curl, like curl is a way to test endpoints in the terminal. I like to use paw, as the folks from Summer Functions know, which is a HTTP client. Another one is Postman, one of these kind of interfaces where you can test endpoints, and it's basically the same as running it from inside kind of a node environment. So if I were to make an endpoint myself on Queen Raae codes, if I created my own Gatsby function there, my Gatsby function there could call Paul's Gatsby functions, because since they are running in the node environment on the server, or in the server environment, you bypass this whole origins stuff. It's only when a kind of a browser calls, a client calls these functions. So that's what you were saying. It's like it doesn't really add any. It makes it harder for other websites to hit it, but other servers and services, as you said, could still hit your functions. If you want to lock down an API, you will need some sort of authentication, so that only people with correct authentication or authorization can use your endpoints.
Yeah, I feel like the cause thing is a middle ground. It's a 50% thing. I mean, it's like I said, it's no means secure, but it will get you halfway there. It will prevent some access, which is sometimes important, sometimes not. I think, we're actually using like a Twitter, and in this API, I'm using a Twitter and a GitHub client, which is just pulling public info anyway. Both Twitter and the OctoKit API are rate limited, but they do refresh the rate limit every 24 hours anyway. So even if someone were to like hammer my endpoints and my Twitter API service gets locked down, it would come back to life in 24 hours anyway.
Yeah.
I think in production for your business, if you were doing this on a much more secure level, then well, starters don't look at anything I've written. I would refer to a proper service for that. But you're absolutely right. Something like Auth0 to do like a bearer handshake, like some sort of token exchange would be the way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it.
I mean, if you've ever tried to use any of these services that is just not public, like you will, if you've used Gatsby with one of the headless CMSs, for instance, like there are these keys that Paul, we're not showing, but the keys that Paul are sending into the clients here, I mean, they are identifying him and him only, and those are the keys that then will be rate limited. And if you then use Paul's API, if you misuse Paul API, as he said, like he will not be allowed to call for 24 hours, and then he will be allowed to call again. And that's kind of how you protect these endpoints. We do have a question though from Petter, and he says maybe it's been answered before. I think we just we went pretty fast over it, but have you used Gatsby to create an API only project?
Well, I mean, Paulie API is an
I think that's the question.
Project. Yeah.
Yes, he has. Yes. He has used Gatsby to make an API only project.
Yes.
So there's all of the functions are in the API folder, and then he also has pages. But what he's used the pages for is to create that documentation we saw. So if we go to the Paulie API. This documentation is in that same Gatsby project. So this is kind of a Gatsby site, but it's then the documentation for the API that you can find, prefaced with API and all of those different. But if I do get Twitter user here, we will get in course error because, no, not from this one, but from, if I did it from locally. Anyway, so that's what it's done. And that's like interesting. And that's what he was saying, that he has an API here, but then he can call it from this Astro site. He can call it from his commercial portfolio, his personal site. He has created his own little API so that he doesn't have to repeat himself everywhere.
On the About page, there's a little diagram that shows which services or which sites use which endpoints. You can see the About button in the top right. There we go. It should be scroll down.
Ooh.
So the API is in the middle, and it will show you, look, it's got the GitHub, the Stripe, and the Twitter endpoints. But then you can see Paulie.dev uses the Twitter and the GitHub endpoints. Paulie Scanner on IO uses the Twitter endpoints. The dashboard uses the GitHub endpoint, and MDX, like we covered last time, to do the Stripe payments. That pay what you want, which is actually also now used by my blog. You can do, and I did actually receive a contribution from a blog post. Someone actually used it. I couldn't believe it. $7. So
Ooh.
I'm going to go yacht shopping with that. So that's good.
I mean, take those $7 with you to New York and buy yourself a latte, I guess.
Oh yeah, since this is the Paul show, I'm going to New York.
Yeah,
man. I go on November 20th and come back on January the 7th. So I'll still be streaming, but it will be, I guess it will be the middle of the working day for me. So I probably won't be able to booze, but I'll be coming down the line from New York.
So we're gonna be, yes, we're gonna see like sober Paul.
Yeah, what a nightmare!
What a nightmare! I feel like there's some singing to be had here, though. Isn't there like a song like, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll probably, when I'm in New York, I'll see if Alicia Keys is around, and I'll get her to join on Thursdays, and she can do a live rendition of it. How does that sound?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm just having some ice on the chat here. I feel like we need to look at some more code since we are a coding stream.
Fine. Yeah. Look at it.
So to make sure. So let's follow one of these arrows then. So we have looked at the API endpoint that calls the Twitter, calls Twitter and gives us back that user information. And you use that on PolyDev. So let's have a look and see how you use that on
Before we move
PolyDev.
on, Sorry to put in. There's a question about how the documentation is generated.
Yeah, how's the documentation created here on Paulie API?
In the MDX file. So if you go to get Twitter user MDX. Oh, it's not overly helpful, is it? So I've got a couple of got a couple of custom components, but in components there's get Twitter user, I think. Yeah, there you go. That is the interactive element. And on the index page, MDX, I think, is the one we want to probably look at. There's all the tables and everything for how I document each endpoint, and there's a code snippet for the examples. And I used MDX for this for that reason, is because one, it renders code blocks quite well and tables, but I can also then put React components inside. So like that expandable thing is a React component, and it just renders its children and collapses. And then each of the
this is not automatically done by reading your functions. Like this is handwritten documentation.
Yeah, this is hand cranked.
Hand cranked.
Yeah, I mean, to Inez's point earlier, like you could do it with Swagger, and I think actually Swagger also has there is, I think, some kind of formal spec for how you're supposed to write API documentation. I can't remember what it's called.
Swagger, I think actually now it's called Open. No, I think now it's called, because it used to be the Swagger. Yeah, Open API, because it was used to, Swagger came up with it, and it was called like the Swagger
Open API
spec or something. But then they've given it to the community, and then it couldn't like be called this, the Swagger spec anymore. So it is Open API. And so that is, and I think for Express, this could be an interesting exploration, because I know for Express projects, you can run Swagger. You can do some stuff that like annotate your endpoints, and then Swagger will create a documentation for you. So it would be interesting to see if it was possible to do something similar with Gatsby functions.
Swagger's also great for TypeScript projects, because it will generate the types for you. So if you're building an API that is then to be consumed by a TypeScript front end, rather than retyping all of the endpoints, you can just take them straight from Swagger. I mean, that's probably the next level for what I've done here. But this was actually my Funk Jam submission, which you won, Benedicte, and I did not.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But I don't think you were allowed to win.
No. Well, to be honest, I didn't know I had the job until after I'd built this and that other one. And then it was like, hey, I think we're going to give you a job, so you can't win Funk Jam. And I was like, okay, it's fair enough.
We're all very happy.
You should just have said no to the job, Paul. Come on. Stand up for yourself and your talent.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes, that would have been a logical choice. So you are calling to display this on your personal site. You are calling the Twitter. No, you're calling your own API, and then you are setting the response as a state variable, and then you are displaying it basically.
Oh, we in my blog now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was trying to tie this together since we're like almost at the hour.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
We have called the Twitter API, and then Polydev has called your Paulie API, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Any more questions from folks?
No, but I need to. I need to use the facilities. I'm just gonna mute.
10 minutes.
No, I'm full of ale. I'll be back in a moment. Just talk amongst yourselves.
Can you please mute yourself, or can I mute yourself? Because one time you were not muted. Well, let's transition.
We didn't hear it. No, I heard nothing back then either. So that's just a myth.
Okay, you want to transition us, Ola, into the next section? Do you feel like I summarized this enough, or do we need me to do like a proper summary again?
Yes, do a proper summary, please.
Okay. So let's go back to this drawing. Paul has created an API for himself, Paulie API. And in there, he has different endpoints. And the endpoint we used today, that was a lot of fun, was updating, was getting his Twitter information. So it's a function called getTwitterUser, and it gets the Twitter user with its username and its description and different entities, location, and all that kind of stuff, and returns that. And then in his blog or like personal site, in the profile info component, he calls that his own endpoint that then calls the Twitter endpoint, and gets that response and displays it on the page, the username, the user description, and the user location. So when Paul updated his description to, stating that he now works at Gatsby, all of his pages automatically updated. We updated where is his pages? Here, the Polydev, it updated on his page here, and it also updated on his page, on his commercial portfolio page. He's got 2 pages. So yeah, you can transition us into the next part.
Now, we're going to do our plug. We always do a plug, and this time it is Deep Diving Queen Raae at her unpirated bootcamp. Is it not piratey?
It's not pirates. Right. So yes, this has been the Paulie show, but now we're gonna advertise for me. Yeah. Because if you want to be like Paulie and create your own API, you need to learn how to create serverless functions, and you can do that now by signing up for the Gatsby Mini Bootcamp. Develop and deploy your first serverless function, and this will be the first in a 3-part series. So this is the first bootcamp, and it will be about creating your first serverless function, and you can end up creating an API, so, like Paul has done. And then the next one will be authentication, and then there will be payments. So if you want to do all 3 of them, you get you can get really far. With this first one, you will be able to create parts of a Paulie API, like calling the Twitter API and stuff like that. We got some great testimonials from people in the chat who joined our summer functions, which is kind of the pre something to this bootcamp. And you can all scroll all the way down to the end, sign up. And there's also the option to choose a discount if you, for any reason, feel like it is needed in your case. I will not ask any questions. I trust you, as I say at the bottom here. So I think this will be a lot of fun because we had a lot of fun this summer, and I've added some new stuff after we tested out co-working. So there will be the forum, there will be assignment and starter files, there will be a live webinar where I code through a possible solution, there will be a co-working session if you need some added accountability, you will get the code sample, and then we will celebrate. And none of these, live sessions are mandatory, but I would love to have you there, and everything will be available at least until the new year. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the DMs or send an email to me or in the chat right now if it's a public question. And I am waiting for a testimonial from Paul, who also created his first functions in the summer's longer bootcamp.
Yeah, I'm happy to write you one. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I'm happy to write it.
It was fantastic.
It was an okay experience. I'm not going to cut that out as a testimonial.
I don't know whether that was supposed to be a drunk accent or a British accent or both. Don't know what that was.
You are British and drunk on our streams, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's very true. Well, no, I'm happy to write a testimonial because it was excellent. The summer functions was excellent.
We have a comment.
Okay.
Inessa says, yes!
Now the poster boy for Gatsby Mini Bootcamps with Queen Raae. And you were an excellent participant.
It is
the
actually
type of participant I would love.
So who is this for then? Oh, we have a question.
Oh, so the short question is I don't. But my Queen email has its own kind of inbox. But I think my other emails are also all over the internet on GitHub and everywhere. But with the Queen one, I'm trying to use that only for kind of outward facing things, and I also use it in all of my example code so that if it gets overloaded, then it doesn't like overload my personal inbox. But I have just given up on kind of that part of living on the internet.
I mean, I guess what you could do, Ineza, is implement a contact form on your website if you're worried about exposing your email, and you could use something like SendGrid to do that, which is relatively easy. So like a web form that people fill out and press submit, and it will send you an email without you exposing your email. And there is an example of that in the Gatsby Funk Jam bite size repo on Gatsby Inc. If you want to check that out, or DM me and I'll send you a link.
Yeah. So you can do that. So that's like a lot of people do contact forms, but then you get spammed through the contact forms, but they don't know your email address. But I guess I just trust my spam filter, which has gotten a lot better. But great question. But it's definitely also if you start sending out a lot of newsletters as well, like it's often good to separate those email addresses, because I've heard of people who have sent a lot of newsletters from kind of their personal email address, and then people have started flagging their newsletters as spam, and then when they send proper emails of more of a personal nature, then they are not getting to the recipients because their email address is flagged as a spam email address. So yeah. And I also heard some questions about Lillian. She is she was supposed to be here, that's why there's a pillow, but she's not. She has not gotten that far today. She is projecting, she's making something.
What? No, that's illegal.
I know. No, don't come down and make a noise. No. Now you're gonna hear Ulla in like daddy mode. But I think that's all for today. Check out Queen Raae codes. It's in my down here, and you can then click on that, sign up today. And if you're not ready for that, I still have the recording from this spring on a practical introduction to Gatsby serverless functions. And also, yes, you said with SendGrid, there is a tiny example with SendGrid in this add flexibility to your site with Gatsby functions as well. So can you hear Ulla's like, can you see the time? And then she's like, I'm not giving in.
I don't care, she said.
Yeah, she said, I don't care. I'm making this. Vill du visa vad du har laget, Lilian?
I can't believe Lillian's going to be able to stay up later than AK. AK's about to fall asleep. AK, it's past your bedtime.
We end this now.
Take yourself to bed, AK.
Ulla, go up and transition us out.
I never think of a plug or anything.
We're done. We're done. Can you transition us out? Go up to your...
Are we done with the whole thing?
I think we're done. I've done my plug. Did we have anything more planned? And we're up on the hour.
And we're, oh my God, it's 8 o'clock.
I mean, we've talked about Paul for almost an hour.
This has been
it was good, wasn't it?
Unauthorized and refueled treasure hunting the sharky waters around the Gatsby Islands with deep diving Queen Raae at her.
Cheers.
Gatsby pirates. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Awkward wave. Awkward wave. Awkward wave.